Northern Ireland has been rocked by a second night of rioting in the town of Ballymena. Hundreds of rioters descended on the homes of immigrants in the county Antrim town, smashing windows and breaking down doors, leaving families cowering inside. Businesses were also attacked and cars were set on fire. Riot police tried to control the crowds, but were greeted with thrown bricks, fireworks, and even petrol bombs, injuring 17 officers. Now, that brings the number of police injured to 32 since the violence erupted on Monday night. Some rioters even filmed themselves breaking into houses and setting them alight.
Yo. Yo, fuck that foreigners! The kettle! Yes! Yeah, fucking cowboys! Yes!
Gosh, it's really like people's houses being set on fire. I mean, it was the image of the riots in England, and they were in Northern Ireland as well, actually, that I think has most stuck with everyone, was when they tried to set on fire that hotel housing asylum seekers. And now to have people from ethnic minorities, their houses burnt down, it's just, I mean, because it's so dangerous for a start. The violence erupted on Monday following a peaceful protest over two 14-year-old boys alleged to have sexually assaulted a teenage girl. The boys had appeared in court earlier that day, charged with attempted rape. A Romanian interpreter had read them the charges. Now, according to police, rioters began to carry out racially motivated attacks on unrelated immigrant households in the area. One of those targeted was Philip Roos, a worker from the Philippines employed at a Ballymena site building electric buses. He told the Irish News that his house was attacked while his wife and two small children were sleeping, saying this.
I received a call last night at exactly 12 midnight. My wife rang me a call and she said that there's a sudden explosion and eventually she see smoke and fire. Then I rushly drove home from work. Then I see many police car, many policemen here, and two fire truck, and I cannot enter my home and my premises. And I am thinking about this car at my back. I'm fixing this car. This is owned by my friend. I just finished fixing this car, and I don't know why that there is will be extremists or activists. I don't know why. I have no enemy. All my neighbors here are my friends.
The Belfast Telegraph's night editor gave LBC these details.
This is purely racism. It's unusual for Northern Ireland to have racist riots. Normally we're fighting each other, but in this case, it's involved with racist attacks on the Romanian community in Ballymena, which I've never seen anything like it before. And with Filipino people putting big signs on their doors saying "I'm Filipino," because obviously they don't want to be drawn into this whole racist violence of cars being burned and, of course, the police being attacked.
Mika Kolev, a Bulgarian mother of two, was also caught up in the violence after rioters broke into her house. She told BBC Northern Ireland this. It's making me move from here to save my children, to not have any depression, any memory in the future for this. We know what's going to happen. It's not possible to wait to see what's going to happen. We never made any problems. If someone from Bulgaria or Romania makes a problem, just go to them and face the problem. Not everyone. Not everybody is a problem in this country. We have been here for 10 years and we have worked and paid rent for 10 years, gone to school normally. We never make a problem. I feel like this is my country, my city. I work, I live here. My daughter was born at this house. She is happy at school and loves music from here. She plays here, has a passport for here. She's scared. In a joint statement, ministers from across Northern Ireland's power-sharing executive have condemned the riots, saying this. As ministers representing every party and department in the Northern Ireland executive, we strongly condemn the racially motivated violence witnessed in recent days and make an urgent appeal for calm across society. The alleged serious sexual assault reported on 7th of June in Ballymena was appalling, and our collective thoughts are with the victim and their loved ones at this deeply traumatic time. It is paramount that the justice process is now allowed to take its course so that this heinous crime can be robustly investigated. Those weaponizing the situation in order to sow racial tensions do not care about seeing justice and have nothing to offer their communities but division and disorder. While all of our citizens have the right to engage in peaceful protest, there can never be any justification for the violence that has taken place in recent days, during which residents have been terrorized and numerous PSNI officers injured. At this point, we were going to have a journalist from Northern Ireland who'd been to the town today, but unfortunately, she was unable to join us because she's currently stuck on a train. Stephen, though, you've researched this story. I suppose, what can you tell us about this? It does look quite reminiscent of what we saw in England last summer, but if anything, more extreme, actually.
Yeah, it is of a type with the protests or the riots rather that we saw in England last summer, as well as with the ones that we saw in Dublin the year before in 2023. I mean, I'm sure that there are going to be lots of local details here that a local journalist would be able to tell us about that I can't, that will but that will additionally shed light on the situation. But I think it is fair enough to draw some broader connections. So, as I say, well, as we saw from the piece, the sort of trigger or the purported trigger, what people are saying was the trigger for these riots was the alleged sexual assault of a teenage girl by two teenage boys who appeared in court, and their charges were read out to them by a Romanian translator. Last year in England and in Northern Ireland, where there were also riots, it followed the murder of some very small children by Axel Rudakabana, and in 2023 it followed an Algerian migrant who had naturalized as an Irish citizen, uh, targeting some school children and a teacher on the streets in Dublin. So in all these cases, you have like an act of violence committed by someone who is, foreign, a migrant, and that then triggers this huge wave of anger. But in all of those cases, it's also clear that the anger isn't just about the crime. I mean, plenty of people in Ballymena today have been sort of compiling lists of all of the different sexual assaults that have happened on young girls and young women in the area, none of which resulted in these kinds of riots or this kinds of violence on the street, because the perpetrators in all of those cases were white. So they went through their court cases and then they went to prison or whatever. There was no street violence. Same could be said of the murder of those girls last year by Rita Cabana. We don't see this kind of outpouring of real anger in other cases, and partly that's because there is this huge movement, which is not just an English movement, not just a British movement, it's not just a UK movement, it's a kind of European and North American movement to whip up anti-migrant sentiment all the time. Plenty of politicians as well, so standing on the sidelines, some of them fanning it a little bit, many of them doing nothing or not addressing it at all. And what they're getting hold of and whipping up is genuine anger at migration. And I think it's something that the left is not really very good at addressing, because there's an argument that one often wants to make, which is that migration is a net good for the country. I actually believe that's the case. We also need it because we have a problem of social reproduction, where we don't have people who can do the jobs that we need to do as a society with an aging population, because birth rates are falling. So we don't have people who can look after our elderly people, or who can work in our NHS, or can do all the other kinds of jobs that either there aren't enough of us who are naturally born, or let's just say white British, to do, or because there's not enough of us who want to do those jobs. So that's a net benefit. There's a solution to the social reproduction problem. There are also other benefits to migration. But the thing I think that we don't talk about nearly enough is that in a country like ours, where goods are incredibly unequally distributed, the benefits of migration are also incredibly unequally distributed. And in fact, the way that migration often occurs means that disbenefits may be distributed. So in this case, as well as in the case where riots happened in England last year, you saw a lot of places where it's a poorer area, people doing lower paying jobs. When migrants come to the country, they often take up lower paying jobs, and so therefore also move to areas with lower rents. Or in the case of the Tories' asylum policy, were moved to hotels in places where people were poorer. And those very fast demographic changes can be shocking to people. There is also in those areas a real lack of proper distribution of state resources. So, for example, there are often areas which are just not doing well, not funded, and suddenly you have an influx of more people demanding the same services in those areas which are already overstretched. And yeah, it's a tinderbox. It's not caused by migration, though. It's caused by the ways in which the state, politicians, deal with migration and also deal with the distributions of goods in our society in general. And none of those things are going to change. We don't have any politicians who are really looking very hard at changing those things. So what that means is that these kinds of events are just going to occur again and again, which is awful. It's awful for migrants, and it's also awful for people who get caught up in the violence, who aren't necessarily, I think, in many cases. I mean, there are definitely leaders, there are definitely agitators, there are definitely, even insurrectionists, but there are also a lot of ordinary people who get caught up in it because it's the one channel where there's an ability to express actually some anger, which I think is not misplaced. It is misplaced, targeted at migrants, but I don't think it's necessarily misplaced in general.
It's interesting to see how this develops. Hopefully, if this continues, we will manage to get a local journalist on, because I'd be very interested to know how this sort of does or doesn't map onto the usual violence that people have associated with Northern Ireland over the past few decades, which is sectarian.